a Marlboro cigarette.
Hollywood once sold cigarettes as glamorous props, a perfectly angled puff, a cloud of smoke, an instant cool factor. But for some stars, the habit went way beyond the soundstage. These weren't casual smokers. They were burning through packs like it was a full-time job, and many paid a brutal price for it. As we count down Hollywood's 10 worst smokers, tell me in the comments which one of these stories shocked you the most. Walt Disney built an empire on childhood wonder, clean-cut storytelling, and wholesome American optimism. But behind that carefully crafted image, he carried a habit that never made it into the fairy tales. Walt was a lifelong smoker, so devoted to the routine that colleagues said they could recognize his presence by the sound of his harsh smoker's cough echoing through the studio halls before he even walked into the room. He favored unfiltered cigarettes and went through multiple packs a day, lighting one after another during meetings, story sessions, and late-night work marathons. Despite being the face of a family-friendly empire, Walt never tried to hide the cigarette from the people around him. But after he died from lung cancer in 1966, the Disney company made a quiet but deliberate decision. They began removing cigarettes from all official photos. Park exhibits, museum displays, and promotional images were subtly edited to erase any sign of Walt's smoking habit, polishing the mythology and protecting the brand's image. It's a reminder that even the man who created the world's most magical kingdom wasn't immune to real-world vices. And as we move down this list, Walt's addiction seems mild compared to what's coming next, but it shows how deeply smoking was woven into old Hollywood. Lucille Ball defined television comedy with her explosive energy and iconic timing. But behind that bright, bubbly persona was a habit she never managed to shake. Lucy was a heavy smoker long before I Love Lucy ever hit the airwaves, and friends said she rarely went more than a few minutes without lighting up between takes. Her famously raspy voice in later years didn't come from age alone. It was the result of decades of constant smoking that had become part of her daily rhythm. But the real story comes from the clash between her personal habit and the show's biggest sponsor. Lucy loved Chesterfields. Philip Morris, who bankrolled I Love Lucy, did not. One day, a representative caught her backstage smoking the wrong brand and demanded she switch. Rather than give up her favorite cigarettes, Lucy came up with a workaround. She reportedly hid her Chesterfields inside a Philip Morris pack, keeping the sponsor happy while still getting the smokes she wanted. It was classic Lucy, quick thinking, clever, and quietly rebellious. By the height of her fame, cigarettes were as common around her as cue cards, and quitting wasn't even on her radar. And compared to what's next, Lucy's workaround looks tame, because the next star built an entire cowboy persona while burning through packs faster than a freight train. Michael Landon became a household name, playing wholesome, heroic characters, first as Little Joe on Bonanza, and later as Charles Ingalls on Little House on the Prairie. But behind that clean, all-American image was a smoking habit that shocked even his closest co-stars. Landon wasn't just a regular smoker, he was a 4-packs-a-day smoker during the height of his career. And these weren't mild-filtered cigarettes. He smoked unfiltered, harsh, full-strength brands that hit his lungs like sandpaper. The constant smoking left such a strong scent that crew members joked he could be identified by smell alone. Some even gave him nicknames tied to how intensely he reeked of tobacco on set. Lighting up became part of his routine. Before scenes, between takes, during breaks, and even while discussing scripts. To many around him, it was simply who he was, the hard-working star who lived on nicotine and relentless determination. Landon eventually quit in the late 1980s, but decades of damage had already taken their toll. His voice had grown rougher, his stamina weaker, and his health began to spiral not long after. Even so, he powered through his work with the same intensity audiences loved him for. But compared to the next name on this list, a velvet-voiced crooner who smoked like it was an essential tool, Landon's habit was only the beginning. Nat King Cole had one of the smoothest, warmest voices ever recorded, but behind that velvet tone was a smoking habit so intense it became part of his identity. Cole didn't just smoke casually. He believed cigarettes deepened his voice, and he treated them almost like vocal preparation. Before recording sessions, he was known to chain-smoke several cigarettes in a row, filling the studio with thick clouds before stepping up to the mic. By the height of his career, he was going through at least 3 packs a day, with some close to him insisting the real number was even higher. A cigarette was almost always in his hand, on stage, backstage, in interviews, at rehearsals, and even at home. Smoking became intertwined with his style just as much as the tuxedo and the piano. But the same habit that shaped his trademark sound also quietly destroyed his health. He developed lung cancer at just 45, and even after surgery to remove a lung, the damage was too severe to overcome. Fans were devastated when he passed away shortly after, cutting short a career that still felt limitless. Nat King Cole was a musical giant, but even he couldn't escape the price of his addiction. And next is a man whose iconic voice and fate were shaped by an even more punishing daily routine. Sammy Davis Jr. lived louder, faster, and bolder than almost anyone in Hollywood, and cigarettes were woven into every part of that breakneck lifestyle. As a member of the Rat Pack, he was constantly surrounded by smoke-filled clubs, late-night rehearsals, and a whirlwind schedule that left little room for rest. He burned through cigarettes with the same intensity he brought to his performances, often smoking up to 4 packs a day. For Sammy, lighting up wasn't a habit, it was practically a reflex. Friends said he'd finish one cigarette while reaching for the next, sometimes forgetting he already had one burning. Cigarettes were part of the image, the swaggering entertainer, the quick jokes, the gold jewelry, the ever-present cloud of smoke hovering around him like a personal spotlight. But behind the charm was a dangerous truth. Sammy's voice, the very thing that made him a superstar, was being shredded by every drag. In 1989, he began losing his sense of taste and developed a persistent tickle in his throat. Doctors discovered a malignant tumor. The best chance of survival was surgery that would remove his larynx, but for Sammy, losing his voice meant losing everything. He chose radiation instead, hoping to save his career, but the cancer returned with a vengeance. Sammy Davis Jr. passed away in 1990, a legend whose brilliance was matched only by the price he paid for his addictions. And next, we move to a Hollywood rebel whose cigarette count makes almost everyone else on this list look tame. Tallulah Bankhead wasn't just a star, she was a force of nature. Known for her fiery personality, razor-sharp wit, and scandalous behavior, she lived life with the throttle wide open. And for Tallulah, cigarettes weren't a habit, they were practically a lifestyle. She reportedly smoked more than 100 cigarettes a day, an amount so staggering that even her friends joked she must have been part chimney. Her voice became one of her trademarks, deep, husky, and unmistakably shaped by years of non-stop smoking. She puffed through rehearsals, interviews, parties, backstage arguments. Every moment of her day involved a cigarette in hand. It was said she could hold a conversation, deliver a punchline, and light her next cigarette all in the same motion without ever losing her rhythm. Tallulah paired her chain smoking with hard drinking and a collection of pills she treated like vitamins. She shocked co-stars, infuriated studio heads, and fascinated audiences with the same chaotic energy she brought to her personal life. Her reputation for wild nights, unfiltered comments, and unpredictable behavior turned her into a Hollywood legend long before the word iconic was tossed around lightly. Compared to most stars of her era, Tallulah wasn't just lighting up, she was burning through life at full volume. And yet, the next star somehow pushed the addiction even further, hiding a darker struggle behind a charming smile that fans never suspected. Patrick Swayze was the kind of star Hollywood rarely gets. Talented, disciplined, charming, and endlessly charismatic. But behind the effortless smiles and romantic lead roles was a man wrestling with pain, pressure, and a deeply addictive personality. Cigarettes became one of his coping mechanisms, and his habit grew into something almost impossible to control. Friends, co-stars, and even his dance partners recalled that Swayze could smoke up to 60 cigarettes a day, lighting one the moment the previous one burned out. On set, he'd keep a pack within reach no matter what he was working on, whether it was Dirty Dancing, Roadhouse, or long hours in rehearsal studios. The stress of fame, personal struggles, and the emotional weight he carried only pushed him deeper into the routine. It wasn't unusual to see him chain smoking during breaks, pacing, processing, or simply trying to stay grounded under the pressure of constant expectations. Even with the athletic physique and intense discipline he was known for, the habit carved away at his health year after year. Swayze often channeled his inner turmoil into his roles, but cigarettes were the one thing he couldn't leave behind. And as heavy as his addiction was, the next star on this list hid an equally surprising habit behind a public image defined by glamour and elegance. Audrey Hepburn embodied elegance so completely that it's almost hard to believe she battled a smoking habit as intense as anyone in Hollywood. But behind the poise, the soft voice, and the serene public image was a routine she picked up as a teenager and never fully escaped. Hepburn reportedly smoked up to 3 packs a day, around 60 cigarettes, especially during stressful periods of her life. For someone associated with refinement and grace, it was a hidden contradiction that surprised even those who worked closely with her. She started smoking in her mid-teens, long before she became a global star, and the habit only deepened as fame amplified the pressure around her. On set, she'd often light up between takes, leaning on cigarettes to calm nerves or reset her focus. Friends described her smoking as constant yet quiet, never showy, never dramatic, just a steady presence woven into her day. Her signature long cigarette holder in Breakfast at Tiffany's only strengthened the public association between Hepburn and cigarettes, even though the prop was originally used to emphasize Holly Golightly's dramatic style. In real life, though, Audrey's habit was more personal, more private, and far heavier than most fans ever imagined. And if 3 packs a day sounds extreme, the next star pushed the limits even further, turning non-stop smoking into a defining, unforgettable part of her legend. Bette Davis wasn't just a Hollywood star. She was a force, a storm, a woman whose intensity on screen matched her intensity off it. She reportedly smoked 4 packs of cigarettes a day, sometimes lighting a new one before the previous cigarette had time to die out. For Davis, smoking wasn't a habit. It was practically an extension of her personality. Cigarettes became one of her trademarks. In interviews, she'd casually puff away while answering questions with that razor-sharp wit. On sets, she'd smoke during rehearsals, in her dressing room, or even while going over scripts with directors. Her co-workers joked that Davis didn't walk into a room, she drifted in behind a permanent cloud of smoke. The deep, gravelly voice she carried into her later years was shaped almost entirely by her addiction. Davis famously admitted she couldn't go more than a few minutes without lighting up, and stories circulated of her smoking in places most people wouldn't dare: dental offices, waiting rooms, even mid-appointment with her dentist. It was a ritual she refused to break, one that followed her into her 80s. But as staggering as Bette's numbers sound, the final name on this list took cigarette consumption to a level no Hollywood star, before or since, has ever come close to matching. Marty Feldman was one of those rare performers who didn't just act funny. He looked funny, he moved funny, and everything about him was instantly memorable. But behind the comedic genius of Young Frankenstein and his other classics was a smoking habit that dwarfed almost everyone else in Hollywood history. Feldman reportedly smoked 5 packs of cigarettes a day, an amount so extreme it shocked even the people closest to him. To put it in perspective, that's roughly 100 cigarettes every single day, practically a cigarette in hand from the moment he woke up to the second he went to sleep. Friends and collaborators said he lived in a constant fog of smoke, pacing around sets with coffee in one hand and a cigarette in the other. When he wasn't filming, he was writing, rehearsing, or brainstorming jokes, and always lighting up. The combination of endless cigarettes and the gallons of black coffee he consumed became a sort of running joke among castmates, but the effects were far from humorous. His voice grew raspier, his breathing harsher, and his energy drained faster than his brilliant mind could keep up with. In 1982, while filming Yellowbeard in Mexico City, Feldman suffered a fatal heart attack at just 48 years old. Many who knew him believed his lifestyle, built on nicotine, caffeine, and relentless work, played a major role in cutting his life short. Feldman wasn't just a heavy smoker, he was in a league completely his own. Hollywood once celebrated cigarettes as symbols of style, rebellion, and charm. But behind the scenes, they left scars far deeper than any role could hide. These 10 stars burn through their lives at a pace few could survive, proving that even the brightest talent isn't immune to heavy habits. If you enjoyed this video, YouTube thinks you'll love this one. Check it out next.